Got that up there? Yeah, the basic principles of science of mind, treatment, and how it works. Boy, let me tell you, I want to start off by reading something from Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind Itself. Treatment is the art and the science of consciously inducing through within the universal subjective for the purpose of demonstrating that we are surrounded by a creative medium which responds to us through the law of correspondence. In its more simple meaning, treatment is the time, process, and method necessary to changing of our thought. Treatment is clearly a thought of negation, of doubt and fear, and causing it to perceive the ever-present presence of God. Ooh, that's some heavy stuff. I don't know about you. We're doing the basic principles of science of mind, and I don't know if when I first came to this wonderful place, Genesis, that if they would have told me right away I'm going to get a treatment, that I would have probably stayed. I've been in the medical field, I've been in the law enforcement field, and anytime somebody said treatment, I was like, oh my God, I got to go to treatment, and it wasn't necessarily a good thing. And I know in the medical field, I was a counselor for chemical dependency for a while, and we would ask the people that would show up, and they would say, we'd ask them, why are you here? And they would say, I'm mandated. The court told me I had to be here. So, treatment. I don't know about treatment. To me, you talk about the elevator speech that goes with science of mind, and you think about, well, what do you tell people when they first come to the science of mind? And this whole book up to this point has been talking about yourself and how you take care of yourself. And now you're to the point where you do the treatment part. And can you just imagine standing next to somebody in the elevator, and you say, yeah, I go to this place, and they give me a treatment, and really? Is it a massage? Is it how do they treat you? No. It's a spiritual mind treatment. Oh my God, I don't know. I got to work on that elevator speech a little bit, because that would kind of scare people away, I think. So you move a little bit past that, and there are 5 steps for this treatment. And the treatment is not so much, you have to do something, or if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen to you. It's not that kind of treatment. It's the kind of treatment that Ernest Hopes was alluding to, is the fact that you're becoming one with not only yourself, but with I'm going to use God a lot, but it's your spirit, your higher power. I use that a lot. And those are all things and that you allow yourself to be into. So treatment is more about calling things to you. There's 5 steps in this treatment, and I have to say I gotta give a shout out to Kelly Cox, who used to come to Genesis, and she lives up north now. And she, when you start learning about treatment, not hearing it or giving it, but actually doing it, there's 5 steps. And she had an acronym that allowed me at that time to remember what these steps were. And she would say, are you ready to rock? And that was the 5 steps that helped through it, because you're thinking about, how am I going to remember all this? What am I going to do? Am I going to do something wrong? Well, first of all, let's get something clear. Let's back up just a little bit. There's no wrong way to give yourself a treatment. And that kind of is an oxymoron of what people think. And no, we got to follow this. We got to do that. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to make sure this is done. This time of the day it happens. You got to do it before the sun drops. None of that. So the very first step in treatment, I'm going to call it spiritual mind treatment. I like that a little better than just saying treatment. And the spiritual mind treatment is recognition. And recognition is something that allows us to think about, we're recognizing what is happening right now. So we need to see it, feel it, or know it. Because you don't always have to see something to know that something's there, right? You don't always have to feel something to know that something's there, right? And that's recognition. So we're going to recognize the first step. And the first step in this particular case is recognizing your higher power, your God. And we're going to recognize that as something that is actually an entity that is applicable. And by recognizing it, then you can associate yourself with it, right? So in this particular case, we use God as all there is. And if there is nothing more that you would want to say about recognition, you can always say God is all there is. Because if we truly believe that God is all there is, then there's just as much God in me as there is in this gong here, that is in Randy, that is in this microphone, that's in this camera. If God is really, there's just as much God between the mic in my hand and between me and Soren doing the sound right there. So if that's the truth, then we just recognize that. And if you want to go a little bit farther, you can start saying things like, what is God then? God is the trees. God is the breath that I take. God is the flowers. God is the car that I drive. God is the health that I have. God is. Because God is all there is. There's nothing that God isn't, right? So you just list off everything that you think at that point God is. Very simple. It could be anything and everything. There is really no wrong answer for God is all there is. That's the very first step. And it's very important because recognition is the fact that you're, like I said, you're calling attention to it and you're realizing it and you're fixating on what that is. And that is God. And if nothing else, we need to give thanks for that being. The second step first step was you, going back to Kelly Cox, you, but it's the you, not the Y-O-U, but it pertains to you. So you are you. So you are part of God. I used to have people come up and say, they were all down on themselves, and in practitioner sessions I would say, do you believe in God? And they would say, yes. Do you believe that God is in everything? And they would say, yes. And I'd say, do you believe God is perfect? I mean, how else can there be? They would say, yes. So if God is perfect, and if God is in everything else, then God is also in you, which makes you perfect. And make them think. And that, to me, is the truth. So you are part of that. So anything that you listed in that first step of recognition is all you as well. Sometimes we don't see it, sometimes we don't feel it, and sometimes we can't stand in that. And that is the blockage. And Ernest Holmes preaches all the time, or used to preach all the time, that there is no disconnection between you and your higher spirit, no disconnection between you and God. And by allowing yourself to think that or know that is just not the truth of who you are. So the second step, unification. So you unify with God. And I really didn't understand that word very much. The only thing that I had to associate it was there was a Star Trek The Next Generation episode called Unification. And it had something to do with the cast of Next Generation and Spock from the original one and the Romulans. And that was my only understanding of what unification really was. So I went back and watched that episode, and it really kind of does follow the philosophy of science of mind. And the unification part is just that you're all part of this. We're all in this together. If there's ever a time that we could see that or know that, is turn on the news and watch the news and see how they masterfully pull us apart. And what I mean by pull us apart, I mean by separation. They want to separate us. They want to say, this is the one classification, and this is another classification, and if you're not in this one, you're not here, and if you're not here, then you're not in this classification. You follow me there? So that is all a bunch of hogwash. That's all a bunch of hooey. That's not truth at all. The truth of the matter is that we are in this universe. We are on this planet, and we are all in this together. And we should treat, everybody should treat everybody as equals, no matter where they come from. And if they have a disbelief in something, or if they're not thinking about something, like I do, not everybody can be a Dolphins fan, right? Did you see that game against the Ravens? Not everybody can be a Dolphins fan. But that doesn't mean that they're not good people. What it just means is that they have an opinion. And somewhere down the road, we can come to a consensus that I can go along with you. I don't have to agree with you, but I can respect you. So unification. So that's becoming one with everybody. That's becoming one with everybody and God. That's the second step. Are you ready? Are you ready? Ready? So the R in the third step, there's 5 steps. And the third step is realization. Now, realization is tough for people. Because for some people in their lives, they just haven't felt that they've been treated right, or they haven't had the best of luck, or things just haven't gone their way, or whatever that whole litany of things on the list are. And I want you to know that God is on your side. And God wants you to be happy. God wants you to enjoy life. And God puts it out there. It's up to you to see it. And sometimes we don't see it so well. I used to think that my grandfather, you hear me talk about him once in a while, he had a massive stroke, and it paralyzed his whole left side. And when he was in the hospital, they would come by, and everybody would come see him, and he wasn't progressing like he was supposed to progress. Meaning that he wasn't getting any feeling back in the left side, he wasn't getting much movement in the left side. If he could position his body so he could move his left side, but he couldn't move his fingers in his left side, he couldn't move his toes in his left side. He could swing his leg around, but he really couldn't move his leg. And so after a certain point, if the doctors that come see him don't see some kind of progression, the insurance will not pay for it because, in their opinion, it's a lost cause. So then they pack him up and they send him home, right? So where I'm going with this is that I used to think that my grandpa would shake his head and he would be like, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? And I couldn't answer that. But I know what it did for me because it happened to him, is it drew us closer as a grandson and a grandfather. Maybe that would have been because he relied on me a little bit. I'm the only grandchild, so I was at the grandparents' house a lot. And even though because of that, I went to go see him more, but it actually bonded my grandfather and I closer together than ever before. And I have to pull something out of that as a positive. Because who likes to wallow in the negative, right? And we all can do that. The pity pie, you've heard that, where everything is going not so well. And we kind of want to blame other things that happen around us, instead of looking ourselves in the mirror and saying, look, I don't know why this happened to me, but I'm going to make it a positive. I'm going to put a spin on it, and I'm not going to let whatever happened to me, for whatever reason, may that be physical or emotional or mental, keep me down. And that's the biggest gift that could happen. My grandfather, really quick, my grandfather came from the generation where you didn't tell people you loved them. My grandfather came from the generation where you didn't show any affection in front of anybody. Yeah, he'd get up in the morning before he went to work and kiss my grandma. I got to see that. And when he came back from work, He would kiss her when he got home, and that was it, on the cheek. So due to this stroke, what came out of it was that I would kiss my grandfather on the cheek every time that I would see him, and every time that I would leave to go home for that day. And it would frustrate him a little bit. And he would say, "Burn, I'm going to smack you," because he just didn't come from that generation, right? That's what we say, it didn't come from the generation. And I would tell him, I'd say, "Grandpa, if you're going to smack me, if you go ahead and do it as long as you use that left hand." And we would tell each other that we loved each other, or I would tell him, he wouldn't tell me. He only told me one time in my life, and that was on the phone. And he kind of didn't even do it then. But that's what I got out of it. And that was the biggest lesson, like I said, that I got out of my grandpa having a stroke. The other lesson that I got out of it was that if you don't have good insurance, or if you're not making progressing in that, then you really have a big hill to climb. And he did. But he took it like a man, and he showed me how to be proud of who I was, even though that left side didn't work. So realization. Realizing that anything is possible. Realizing that there's nothing out there that you can't achieve, you can't get, you can't go to, you can't do. And anything or anybody who tells you that you can't, you might want to take a look at that and discuss for yourself if that person is really doing you a favor or not. And what is it? Why would it stop you? Why can't you do this? Why wouldn't you do this? Yes, I think the older we get, we can go, well, I should have done this, or I should have done that. I should have turned left. I should have turned right. I should have stayed with this person. I should have left this person. I should have paid more attention to how to read, write, and do arithmetic. Should have paid more attention in class. Whatever it may be. As we get older, I think there's things that we can do that with. But the bottom line is that we made the choices. And the great thing about it is we can make choices every single day. Right here and right now is what's the important. And that's the realization of it. This spiritual mind treatment is not about something from the past or for the future. It's for right now. It's happening right now. Okay, realization. The fourth step, are you ready to, T, is to give thanks. Is to give thanks. Be grateful for. Be thankful for. Because there's many people out there, there's many things, situations in people's lives that have changed so much. And one of the things I'm grateful for is having a loving wife. What I'm grateful for is having parents who love me. What I'm grateful for is I have a daughter that calls me once a week or every other week. What I'm grateful for is that I have a roof over my head. What I'm grateful for is that I can take a warm shower whenever I want. What I'm grateful for is I have a job. I have an income. I have a spiritual family. That's what I'm grateful for. Now, there's other things that I can be grateful for. I don't have a car payment. I have an older car, but I don't have a car payment. I have a house. Courtney and I have a second house out at Ocean Shores that we can go to and vacation to when we make time for it. I'm grateful for I have a Pete Rose rookie card. I'm grateful for the fact that I've been able to see the Reds, that team. I'm grateful for each and every one of you for being here. So I'm thankful for that. So in the spiritual treatment, you give thanks for all that. Don't be scared to voice it. Don't be scared to say it out loud. There's power in your voice. There's power in your thought. There's power in all that. And you are that power. And anybody who tells you you don't have that power, I'm telling you right now, you do. You have the choice of doing what you do, not others. So be thankful for. Thankful for. And verbalize it. And I was going to backtrack a little bit, but I won't do that. So just be thankful for it and give thanks. There is also something about giving thanks that allows you to acknowledge what's going on in front of you. And yes, you can think about it, but it's okay to thank people. It's okay to tell them you appreciate them. It's okay to do those sort of things. Don't worry about what other people think about you. Why is Burney doing that? Why? I mean, before COVID, if you came into Genesis, you always got a hug from me, right? I didn't care who you were or what you did or where you came from or what car you drove or what house you lived in or how many family members you had in your family. I gave you a hug because that was what it was. But we had to shut that down a little bit. And that was a tough one to get over, too. That was a tough one for me to not do because that was how I expressed giving thanks to you. That was how I expressed being grateful to you. Now I can say it, but personally, I don't think it has the same meaning unless I actually give you a hug. But just know that it's the truth of who I am. The fifth step in the spiritual mind treatment, are you ready to rock? We're back to an R again, is to release it. And to release it, and we have such a stigma about hoarding on to things, keeping things to ourselves, not giving them out, not sharing them. And that's not the spiritual mind treatment. Spiritual mind treatment wants you to release it. And let it go. What? Let it go? I just went through these 4 steps, and now you're asking me to just let it go and not pay attention to it and not do this and not look under the carpet, or if you can't plant a seed and continue to dig up the soil to see how the seed is progressing. It won't. I guess the hydroponic ones you could probably do that with, but the ones that are actually in the soil, you just can't do that. It won't grow. It needs to just set and fester, if you will, and go through its process. And by going through a spiritual mind treatment, you're handing it over to God, your higher power, and saying, here. It's kind of like this. Here's a good example. It's kind of like when we were kids, and if you did this, great. If you didn't, then okay. But for the ones that did, here we go. We'd sit down and write a wish list for Christmas. And then we'd hand it over to our parents or our guardians or the people who were watching over us. And we would just hope that on the 24th, or the 20th, well, we got older, we opened presents on the 24th. But when I was a kid, we always opened them on Christmas. So the 25th, you would hope that on the 25th, you would actually get these presents that you look for. So that's kind of what you're doing. You're given this wish list of what's gonna please you, what's gonna make you happy, how your life is gonna go, where you're gonna go with your life, and all these great things, right? I wish for better health. I wish for more money. I wish for a better job. I wish for a loving relationship. I wish that I want my time, talent, and treasures to be used to the highest power of who I am. And now I'm turning it over to God. I'm turning it over to the universe. And the universe is, in the philosophy that Ernest Holmes is from, and he didn't make any bones about it, and he wanted to share it with everybody, is the universe always says yes. The universe always says yes. So when you're saying, I turn it over, I give thanks, and I release my words, you're turning it over, and you're letting it go. I must warn you, though, or I must say to you, that you got to be careful, because if the universe always says yes, the universe doesn't have any filters. So if there's something in there that isn't going to serve you, and you release it or turn it over, then the universe is going to say yes to that. So the two things that I would like you to take from this is, one, in a spiritual mind treatment, you can, but I'm going to say can't put a time frame on it. Because the universe doesn't know time. God doesn't know time. And my biggest example of that is in taking away from no other person who I was with before her, but it took until I was in my 40s before I had what I consider to be a healthy, loving relationship. That doesn't mean I didn't have experiments along the way. It just means it took that long, and I didn't know that. I wanted that in my 20s. And I didn't get that until I was in my 40s. So there is no timetable on God, the higher power, the universe. The second thing is, and ironically we were kind of talking about it a little bit earlier today with one of our friends, is that depending on how specific you get, if you leave it broad, I always think about a fisherman and his boat and the fish that go by. In a weird way of thinking of it, but I always think about it that way. I always think about all these fish that go by. I want fish to go by my boat, okay? But I only want 2 foot long ones. I want them to be sunfish, and I want them to, have little tints of pink in them. Well, all these fish are going by, and there may only be 1 or 2 out of that group that is specific enough for what I've asked for. So that's a plus and a minus, is I don't want to get so specific that I only have a minimal amount to choose from, but I also don't want to get so vague that all these things happen. And my favorite story about that is, you guys might know her. She's B. Westcott Curl, and she used to be a practitioner here. And she was talking one time about having waterfront property. And it's one of her favorite stories that she tells, or one of the ones I enjoy her telling. And she was telling God, I want waterfront property, I want waterfront property, I want waterfront property. I want to live with waterfront property. Well, one time she was living wherever she was, and there was no water around her, but they had a big flash flood. And it flooded her whole backyard. And by flooding the whole backyard, she could look out her kitchen window, and here's her waterfront. Here's the waterfront she was asking for. So we have to be a little bit careful about how specific and how vague we are about that. Know your intent, and know what you want, and that's what you ask for. That's what you do in that third part, that realization part. So those are the 5 steps of the spiritual mind treatment. And I used to think that I couldn't give myself a spiritual mind treatment back in the day. I had to go to somebody else, these people called practitioners, these people who pray. I mean, and I'll tell you, Genesis has some fabulous, fabulous prayers. Cynthia Zink, who's in the house here, is a fabulous prayer. Anna Hawthorne, who's in the house, is a fabulous prayer. Randy's a fabulous prayer. Susan Hall, wherever she is, she's a fabulous prayer. Christina Young, she's a fabulous prayer. And my wife, she's a fabulous prayer. And she's an interesting story because she didn't like getting up and talking. I'm not talking about her, she's right here in the audience. She didn't like doing it. She didn't like, she always thought that she had to write it down. Courtney is a fabulous person at writing things down, and she always wanted to read it. And it was like, come on, just let yourself be you. Well, I'm going to be judged. What? You're not going to be judged. No, I am. I'm going to say the wrong words. I'm not going to do it in the right way. I'm not going to say the right things. Courtney, just do it. Just let your heart open up and just do it. And she got to the point where that's what she does. And if you get a chance to listen to her pray, she's a fabulous prayer. So, I learned that no, that's not entirely true. You don't have to go have somebody give you a spiritual mind treatment, because you can give yourself a spiritual mind treatment. And that is the gift that Ernest Holmes tells you when he's writing in The Science of Mind. Is it's about you. We get told so many times that why is it always about you? Why is it always about you? Well, not in a conceited way, but it is about me. It's how I react. It's how I do things. It's how I think about things. It's who I associate with. It's what decisions I do. I'm the one that does that. You're the ones that do that. So think about that. So there's your 5 steps in spiritual mind treatment. Thank you, Kelly Cox. Are you ready to rock? And if you have more questions about that, or you want to get more in tune with something like that, come see me, come see Gail, come see one of the practitioners. I just mentioned their names. Put it on Facebook. Put it on Genesis Family. We'll get you there. We'll get you to someone or somewhere or something that will help you in that definition of that. So I want to leave you with another quote. And if everything works out here, it'll be right here. I love technology when it works. Okay, so it's Ernest. Okay. Maybe not. Okay. It's Ernest Holmes, The Bible, The Light of Spiritual Philosophy. And if we can get it to work. Okay, here we go. When we have the inner light, we pass from death to life. And this life to which we pass is the life of God. Consequently, it is everlasting life. Death has nothing to do with life everlasting, and is only an impression of the soul wishing to rid itself of the body no longer useful. Which is kind of funny, because that's not really what I was going to read, because it was on the wrong page. So you're going to get a double shot here. Okay, we are surrounded by spiritual. This sounds so much better. We are surrounded by spiritual consciousness and the mental law. From contribution of the two, all things are made. We unify with the spiritual consciousness as we become aware of it. We speak it into form as we believe in it and the power of our own word. In prayer treatment, we shall be first a realization of power, then a spoken word. One generates, the other distributes. Which is true. So let's pray. Let's take that breath and feel that and know that the words of Ernest Holmes and the writings of Ernest Holmes and this spiritual mind treatment, it gives us an avenue, a path, a way to join, to know that we are joined with God, with that spirit, with the higher power. Knowing that we are all equal, knowing that we are all in this together, knowing that we can feel that, know that, and understand that, and be that. That there is nothing that we as a group or as an individual cannot achieve if we put our minds to it and use that spiritual mind treatment. I know this all to be true. I bless each and every one of you, and I know that life is good right here and right now. And with that, I just say, and so it is.